the free version of Commanding Demand, the online workshop for business development with branding. I am Nick Dachris, and I would like to confer on you a magic spell for exorcising the economic crisis. If that sounds dodgy to you, good luck finding something that doesn't nowadays. I am inviting you to become a brand leader, a modern hero or heroine of sorts, the spark of change you wish to see in your environment yourself. Stranded on piles of certificates and evidence of working experience whose weight in the job market is growing counter-proportional to their mass, can an educated person seriously imagine a state of dignity for the human individual under the authoritarian rule of an automatic hyper-morality of electronic statistics? Apart from surrendering to algorithms of servility to power gambling and from turning reptilian like some otherwise well-meaning financial market dinosaurs, are agglomeration, hypocrisy, violence and death the only other options? Or can you and I correct the system constructively, in some way that doesn't lead to seclusion, corruption, castration, conformity, self-derision, self-destruction, or monolithic coercion? Can we, mere mortals beyond the wolf's lair, rebranded as open society, claim to have a right to our lives? That, my brethren, however overtrodden or messed up it sounds, was the profound nature of inquiry that led me to creating a workshop on commanding demand. We have the right to our lives, I believe, because it's in our best interest to do so, to be capable of deciding our behaviors, to be accountable for the misery we inflict on others, to be worthy of some merit when we act altruistically. Because otherwise we would be little more than mischievous cannibals at the mercy of anyone more powerful than ourselves, including the drones of the bureaucratic state, the anonymous shoals of human piranha, the eponymous killing machine manufacturers, and the Hitlers and Genghis Khans of our age. Because despite our worship of technology, of fashion and of bureaucracy, we still value honor and that madness called love, which is individualistic and, unlike the games of chess and Monopoly, can never be programmed into machines. Because we can believe and change beliefs, our own and those of others, including those financial market dinosaurs in the wolf's lair, at whim. And I believe this because of one concept that gives every human individual a role in the modern world, but it is so abused and exploited that we've grown the habit of avoiding to stare at it directly, like the sun that will burn our retinae, and yet is the very source of life in the universe which we consume and are consumed by. So identified with a widespread hatred towards the wolf's lair dinosaurs that even the brightest young people today are running from it in the opposite direction, to nonsense and to despair. This concept, my dears, is branding. The first thing you've got to know about it is that branding is a mystical code for commanding demand. As such, it can be blamed for its own abuse and misapprehension, for in commanding demand the connotation of mind manipulation is revealed that with branding is sublimated as taboo and innuendo. We are in such a crisis now that we can no longer afford this mysticism, and ought to be as open as we can with each other and get over it. There is no successful communication that doesn't include mind manipulation and consequently behavior modification. It is a pragmatic rule of nature, of science and of common sense, which no paradigm of knowledge can refute and whose denial is mass mental illness. We've suffered long enough from lies about propaganda, enough political schizophrenia, enough hypocrisy. Hence the title of my workshop, Commanding Demand, the Entrepreneur's Initiation to Branding. The second thing you've got to know is that everything you've heard, thought or believed about branding is probably true, but out of context and out of reach in terms of articulation. In fact, branding is one of the two means of articulation that are there, the other being iteration. Articulation is a process of expressing something clearly. The end of it is existence. Branding is what makes things exist to begin with in the narrow field of perception that the human mind can achieve and in the broader context of social intercourse. If you had no concept of it whatsoever until now, this article of mine has just branded branding for you. It's brought it into existence, and the next step is to iterate it, again and again, until it turns into a habit. Another word for it would be imprinting or engraving, another marking or stigmatizing, another revealing or distinguishing, another establishing or institutionalizing, another promoting or propagating, another sharing or selling. All these predicates imply a subject and an object, the former being our human selves, the latter being the human meaning of our human experience. The third thing you've got to know is that no one can know everything, by implication of the fact that the demand which branding commands is infinite. For every person there are infinite brands that consist the world around us, and for every brand there are infinite persons who are under the influence of infinitely arbitrary combinations of other brands by which to demand and articulate knowledge about it. But for that communication process which is called branding and serves the purpose of commanding demand, there is only a limited number of disciplined approaches that the English language can take to explain it. There are, of course, hundreds of scientific and philosophical disciplines which pronounce different fractions of its structure, from economics and linguistics to biochemistry and fine arts. If you pardon my vulgar reduction and flat packing of its mysteries, I would like to share with you my spherical understanding of branding that you can employ for your own benefit straight away. The key to it all is, knowing that we can't know everything about it, to trust the system. Because no matter how uncertainty rules human affairs, a system is nothing but a machine that reduces that uncertainty, operating in near certainty, otherwise it wouldn't function at all. And we have to admit that it does function, even if it breaks down a lot. Studying its components and circuitry for years in the field and in theory, I have inferred a recipe which works for 9 out of 10 of us as a manual of the uncertainty-reducing system of our world through the lens of commanding demand. The fourth thing you've got to know, then, is how I'm proposing to share it with you. I have more than one options for you. The one I am imparting for free is the one I think most benefits those people about to release a new brand immediately, and comprises a substantial primer on my paid consultation services for everyone else. It's a short version of the Commanding Demand workshop where just the activities are presented with minimal theory and no further facilities. I implore you to respect my work and my own role as a human in a world of machines and to follow the legitimate route of accessing the rest of the project. To the best of my knowledge, there hasn't been any other genuinely holistic conceptualization of branding published until this recording, even with claims of investing in people where investment was pragmatically in people's redundancy and subordination. I would have loved to have found and adopted one, for I've had to resource all my research and design by myself, and it took me many years and a lot of sacrifices. If it wasn't for the monumental economic crisis going on globally, I would have gladly given up long before getting to this point. But I haven't, and now I have to make up for it, for what's left of my life. The fifth and last but not least of the things you've got to know about branding before you decide upon my invitation is yourself. Know thyself, it's no joke. You are a brand first and foremost to yourself. You didn't make it by yourself alone, as no brand is made by just one person, but you're about to take full control of it with my workshop and spawn a new brand from scratch. This is to place you into perspective, for maybe you don't want to go down this path and would rather have been warned beforehand. It is a rite of passage for adults only. But there are adults who can take up responsibility and adults who can't. If you like placing the blame for your situation on others, like your parents, your teachers, propaganda, the state, the previous government, the communists, the capitalists, the system, God and the devil, etc., finding yourself righteous and innocent forever, then bye-bye, thanks for stopping by. That attitude I call demanding command, and I have nothing to add to it. If in contrast you don't mind sharing the blame, fixing things and being a hero, despite the scoffing from the cowards who will hold you accountable for the same problems you want to fix the moment they spot you doing it, then stay with me, we can make the world a better place. Or at least we can try. That, my brothers and sisters, is freedom. The freedom to err, to fail and to succeed, regardless of social pressure, of statistical means and modes, and of convictions about fatalistic determinism. The freedom from conformity into uniforms and higher authorities than ourselves. The freedom of information, speech and enterprise. The freedom of commanding demand. The freedom to improve. There are 7 steps in commanding demand: business, culture, society, marketing, advertising, design, and pricing. These are the names I'm using for the parallel universes of discourse in which articulation must be made to be pragmatically efficient prior to marketing proper. There are more names and more universes out there, but we have to group them somehow in order to reason coherently, and these 7 represent just my conceptualization of the issue at hand at my level of English as a second language. Pause me and replay me when you feel that my English has failed me, or when you need time to think and take some notes. It helps to be able to reason in a second language, no one argues with that. What some people may argue with is what is pragmatical efficacy. To this I answer with the words of logician Charles Sanders Peirce on what pragmatism is, published in 1905. The rational meaning of every proposition lies in the future, Peirce wrote, for future conduct is the only conduct that is subject to self-control. Whenever a man acts purposively, he acts under a belief in some experimental phenomenon. Consequently, the sum of experimental phenomena that a proposition implies makes up its entire bearing upon human conducts. In that sense, and under awareness that experiment is a process of disproving some belief or other until a consensus about reality is formed, I call the outcome from the experimental interplay between net supply of and net demand for a brand, the brand's network value. With the pragmatists, I agree that every person has the right to believe in any ideology suits him or her a priori. Thus, I'm not arguing ideology, merely expressing an opinion that serves me to pass on to you the meaning of network value. Where I am employing examples from the real world and sounding critical, I don't mean my opinion to be taken as absolute, as if only one opinion could be right, but as demonstration of the general critical attitude by which I wish you to filter my presentation and all information you receive, and expect others to be filtering thus the information you are devising to be honest and consistent with yourself. I think of you as a real-life hero, nowadays called entrepreneur, who is setting out to change the world for the better. Maybe you're only a student of illustration and graphic design like I have once been, or maybe you're only a journalist who wants to unveil the truth to the public, or a financier who divines the future from stock market numbers, or even a scientist with a new theory to explain the universe. It's all the same to me at this point. You're a startup entrepreneur anyway, and you are about to get initiated to the mystery of branding to get ready to hit the market. My recording of the 7 initiation activities, comprised mostly of brief introductions and questions with examples of answers, runs for about an hour, but it may take you considerably longer to find your own answers and thus create your own brand. It's hard intellectual labor, requiring decisions you'd better take before it's too late. I recommend you set apart a whole day for it. At least. I'm drawing elements from the Star Trek trademark lore of the Gene Roddenberry legacy to make my example comprehensible and entertaining. Overlaying the original, The Next Generation and the Voyager series with the real world, I am composing another myth with the brand name Beam Technologies. Myth is an essential part of the course, underpinning all the universes of discourse of Commanding Demand. It's where the experimental expectations of one's ideological beliefs become exposed and pinned down into a cognizable form before their disguise and erosion by heavier marketing and advertising expenditures. At the same time, it helps delineate the boundaries between business and brand and product and financial item and vision and mission. It stands between business idea and brand manifesto, revealing the social belief upon which the entrepreneur is experimenting, the cultural intention versus behavior contradiction he or she is determined to resolve, and what ethical resolution is motivating him or her. The comprehension of brand and business as separate entities is central to my analysis and synthesis of the system, and you'll have to be on the lookout for it in the free version of the workshop. Furthermore, I will guide you to transcribing your own personal myth into an executive brief of a double-entry brand account, which you may revisit as many times as the brand accounts and campaigns your enterprise may need. The business, its products, and maybe one's own person must be branded under different accounts. I will also guide you to designing your first public communications, including the conception of a trademark symbol and of a starter price for whatever you want to be supplying to the market. I will take you through some simple formulae of elementary math requirements, step by step, until you have a tenable price for your product, your future profit, and even your future goodwill, which is a rather controversial issue in accounting. One little detail that you aren't getting in the 7 free frames of brand building activities, and you have to go through the 76 frames of the full workshop to acquire, is what I call the super brand frame of mind. Imagine that you are a superstar brand and the world lays at your feet, right? What would you have to account for, and what would you feel like besides wet from excitement? That is the super brand frame of mind, if you can conceive of such a fantasy without some reassurance from a fantasy expert like myself. But you can be sure that fantasy branding, you and me and the economy are very much parts of the same organism. An organism in distress from the very same anti-uncertainty machine that it has devised by itself over the centuries to get more comfortable with the contradictions inherent in its own experience. That is why the superbrand frame of mind contains a logos and a mythos, a reason in English or proportion, and a myth or metaphysical belief about things we can't know with certainty, for they simply lie either in the future and therefore haven't yet come into being, or in the past and therefore have been irreparably distorted through brands like you and me since occurring. A logos and mythos is an a priori immutable religion of sorts, the subjective statement of a candidate brand for reducing uncertainty at a universal level. A random visionary's dream of an experienced past and an ideal future under a current belief at a specific moment in space-time. It defies temporarily the fundamental law of the excluded middle in logic to bring its new meaning to the universe, conscious that where in logic contradictions are not permitted, social reality is full of them. We keep saying by juxtaposing the logo and mythos of the infinite brands out there with each other and with our finite lives, forever redefining our trajectories both as a species and as individuals in an unconscious global ballet analogous to the sky dance of starling swarms. The law is reinstated a moment later when the logos and mythos of one brand become shared by another, and so on until no one can argue its validity apart from the next entrepreneur with a new brand to sell, with a new logos and mythos to share. And that's all for now, my brothers and sisters. Thanks a lot for attending. If you want more, as you should by now, please help yourselves to the full workshop or contact my company Delta Salience Ltd. For the time being, I wish you all the best with the free version, and I call on to you to get ready and hit the market. Stand up and stand out. The way out is the way in.